I guess before having Paul and Praful come and show the actual product, show our multi-domain network operations, as Jeff was talking about, show our new Uno observability capabilities. I want to talk a little bit about the broader platform. And please keep asking questions here. This is my only slide, so if you're waiting for the next slide, you've waited too long. So you know, CloudVision is now 10 years old, and we, you know, when we started CloudVision, we kind of started with 3 fundamental principles. And I want to talk about these today because I think they're really still very fundamental to both how we think about the product, but also the problems that network operators face in the enterprise, you know, managing large-scale networks. So the first is, you know, how do we get uncompromised access to all the data? Right. The second is how do we think about building this as a platform, not some big point product? And the third is how do we focus on this modern operating model? And so you're going to see these highlighted in Paul's demo and in Praful's demo as well. But I want to talk about each of these and feel free to jump in. So this first one, you know, the problem of network monitoring has always been is how do I get access to all the data? Right, as ubiquitous as SNMP monitoring tools are in the enterprise, they're still used today basically everywhere. Right, we all know that that is not the solution. Right, that is something that gives you some low granularity, low depth data that maybe tells you something's wrong, maybe after you've already had a support ticket opened, and then, you know, if you don't have access to the data, you're fundamentally going to the CLI, and that this is, you know, this is not how you do modern monitoring at scale. So when we thought about this problem, you know, we built the platform not as, okay, we're doing data center monitoring. What features do I need to monitor? How do I get that data out of EOS? Okay, now let me go and build the features, right? Like this top-down traditional approach to network monitoring. We took a totally different approach. We said, how do I build a system that can stream all the state of the network in real time, store it in a scale-out database forever? You know, we not actually forever, right? But build a platform that can do this, and then build applications on top. What applications? Well, we'll figure that out when we get there. But if I can solve this problem of how to get access to all the data, that is the fundamental problem, right? And so a lot of this is enabled by EOS. Jeff talked about the state-based architecture of EOS. We have all the state of the system in a database. We've built CloudVision to be able to stream all of that state off box. What do I mean when I talk about this? Yes, I mean interface counters and interface up, down, and all the standard things you'd expect. But I truly mean everything that is there in the database, which means everything you can get from the CLI. So that means everything in the management plane from you know, that hardware platform counter that happens to be the thing that tells you that something's going wrong, that actually explains why you're seeing interface errors or seeing drops, to the full control plane, right? Your routing table, your RIBs, your FIBs, all the different protocols. We capture flow data and kind of control plane packet data, right? Because traditionally it's, you know, you got your flow collector over here, you got your management collector over here, but you really want both of them together, right? So we can collect sFlow data, IPFix, all the various new forms of flow collection out there. And we bring it all into one place, right? And so this is how we're able to kind of expose the full state of the network and continue to add features without having to upgrade the network. Right, so if you think about our broad set of customers, they have their, you know, their network there. You can't go and say, oh, to get that monitoring, go upgrade your network, right? Like that means taking an outage window and going and figuring out how to schedule that. We can go and add new features in CloudVision that stream new data across the full set of EOS versions we support and provide that without touching the network. And that's the sort of thing that we can provide here. The things that I think have expanded since once we started, this has been kind of a core fundamental belief of what we've built, is that it's not just about network data, right? Jeff talked about this. We now pull in data from around the network to help explain what's going on and translate users and VMs and applications into those networking principles and back. Because as a network operator, oftentimes what you're solving is not about an IP address, it's about your customer's problem, right? Your application that's not, your customer's application or user that's having an experience problem, and how do you translate that into quickly understanding whether the network is at fault. I think the other thing that this gives us is this tremendous advantage if you think about today and all the talk around building AI models for the network, all of that is premised on the fact that you can actually get access to the data, right? Your models of understanding what's going on in a network and whether you can predict a problem only come down to whether you have this full view of what the network actually is. And that's what NetDL provides for us. So as a simple example, we built a model looking at all of the transceiver data in our network. So transceivers expose these really low-level signals called DOM, digital optical monitoring signals. And so we ended up building a model that looked across these that today can predict about 6 weeks earlier that a transceiver is going to fail, right? And so that turns this problem of, oh gosh, my transceiver is starting to fail, I'm seeing errors, and now it's dead. I need to go open an RMA, to a proactive, hey, your transceiver is going to fail. You should probably turn it off, and let's go and work through that. That's what having this super granular data enables, and I think is going to be a really big differentiator for CloudVision and continue to be going forward because of access to all the data.
Hey there, it's Malcolm Budden.
Yes.
Quick question on the data. So we've got stream the full network state in real time. Are there specific features or models, like if I turn this thing on and I say, like, right, I want to start streaming data, are there particular models or core features that come out the box and then you build on top of that, or could you just explain a little bit?
That's right. I think the so internally at EOS we have network data models for everything in there, and that's what all of our applications are built on. When you run the CLI, you get a tech output representation of that, right? But we're just streaming the models as they change to CloudVision and then building on top of that. And in CloudVision basically is saying, here are the models I want to stream, right? And we have customers who will take this directly from the box as well. To Jeff's point, right? This is not limited to kind of what we can do in CloudVision. This is a fundamental capability that we actually built with our largest Cloud Titan customers who were looking to turn off SNMP and actually did so back in 2017, right? And like we're really at the advance of how do I really get away from this poll-based system to a real streaming telemetry-based system, and we're building on top of that same infrastructure.
And other question about that is you mentioned briefly that you import other data, so this can be actually a user experience type of thing. Is this based on the actual user transaction data or agents, or how?
I'll probably pause that a little bit for Profly's going to go in more detail, but we're building a product for the network engineer, right? And so we're not trying to go into the agents on laptops sort of thing. This is really about how do I tie into we call it sensors, tie into VMware and get application data of what's running across the network, or into a NAC to understand the user pieces. So you could certainly expand this to add NPM type data in there as too, and probing. We have some capabilities in EOS, but that's it's really much more about understanding what are the things outside of the network, what are they doing, what are the flows, how do we understand what those things are and translate that to flow data, so that we can then see what they're doing, where they are in the network, and whether they're having a good experience.
Okay, so you're connecting the server with the user based on the flow data that you also have in the telemetry.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're able to consume telemetry from non-Arista devices if there's other stuff like that on load balancers or other things in between.
We do have, I think we're obviously very focused on the Arista estate, but we are always in a multi-vendor environment. And so it's really important that we don't have gaps in our view of the network. So we do have the ability to consume SNMP or other types of data from third parties and bring it into the system to complete the picture.
Okay.
So, yep.
How are you addressing sort of the change in application models, right, to from the traditional model of on-prem servers, on-prem users, to hybrid users, hybrid and multi-cloud, right? I mean, the users and the apps are moving away from the enterprise network at least part of the time.
Yeah, that's right. And so,
how are you still gathering data there? Do you have like an endpoint agent or something that you can use to?
So a lot of this, we're largely today we integrate with the NAC and the application, kind of management system. And so as you move to your hybrid cloud, that management system is not VMware. Maybe it's GKE or GCP or something like that. But also your router is probably not a physical router, but maybe or Cloud EOS, I should say, running there. And so, kind of how you extend your network out to the home, we can provide visibility to the points that were there. If we don't, we don't see into your home network, but we can see when you come at the point you come in, and then your traffic from there, right? Because part of this is all. If you think about it, the problem of network monitoring is not about monitoring your campus or monitoring your data center. It's about monitoring your applications and users and how they cross these boundaries from a campus across the WAN to your data center and being able to stitch it together. And obviously, we're trying to provide as much visibility as we can to the part that we see there.
Right. So I mean, there's a whole class of products around digital experience monitoring that are kind of built around that. Are you guys?
We're not in the digital experience monitoring side. We're really focusing on how do you understand whether your network is performing, whether your users are having issues, and how do you quickly get to mean time to innocence or to remediation when it comes to a problem happening in the network that's impacting your users, and understand that that's happening before your user opens the ticket, right? So the second piece here that's core is really about building a platform, not a product. Jeff talked about this, but maybe I'll highlight this in kind of two different ways. I think one is all about how do we take the lessons of EOS? What do I mean by that? We didn't go build a data center operating system and then a campus operating system and then a WAN operating system. We focus on networking. Networking is, yes, there are different features used in different places, but it's all fundamentally very similar. And it is about building the right platform and investing really heavily in it and continuing to expand and test some more and have great quality around that and just really focusing there, not rebuilding it and throwing it out. And this, that's the same thing really approached in CloudVision. How do we build it right? When we started this in 2014, there was no world in which we could have a cloud service. Our customers were all data center customers. They really wanted to be on-prem. But we built this as a scale-out multi-tenant cloud service architecture that we actually deployed internally too, knowing that this is where we wanted to go, right? And so when we deployed made available our cloud service in 2019, it wasn't because we went and rebuilt the product to then be able to have a cloud service. And it also wasn't because we took a VM that was for on-prem deployment and said, oh, it's running in the cloud now. I've got a cloud service, right? Like, how do you get true scale-out cloud service capabilities? And it's this investment, constant investment in building it right that is really important here. I think the other way to think about this is, Jeff alluded to, is think about as an industry, how common is it to have a platform where it's actually the only platform that the vendor is pushing, that every, let alone 10 years, maybe 5 years, you don't have a new platform come out for a new space that's going to replace the old one, or an acquisition that comes in that then is competing with your existing platform. You got to figure out how to deal with it, right? Our single EOS, single CloudVision story is what allows customers to invest in this model and really continue to grow here without having these big, shifts. And I think that's pretty rare. And it comes to the fact that we actually have focused on CloudVision as a first-class product, not as kind of a side thing we ended up having to do for a market we were trying to go into. And that obviously continues to be very true today. And then finally, I want to talk about this modern operating model, right? We really, the goal, we have this broad range of customers, as Jeff said, and we didn't want to just build a wizard, right? Because just like for monitoring, if you don't have access to the data, you got to go to the CLI. If you can't configure the network the way you want to, you can't do automation, right? So wizard is nice for the customer the wizard actually goes and builds the network they want. And we obviously have recommendations and validated designs, but we go after a really broad set of customers and a broad set of markets who want to really tune and understand how to configure their network and want a platform to automate that. So how do you, this all starts with building a network model that is flexible, that they can extend for generating the configuration, having a pipeline for pre and post checks, and an enterprise-grade change control process for rolling it out, not just the click it and off it goes, right? But actually having the confidence to make changes quickly, right? That from an enterprise perspective, if you can make changes, small changes quickly, hitlessly, that's how you really get operational flexibility. It's this large changes infrequently with a large outage window, which most people are stuck in. How do you move across to that point where you can really have the flexibility to make changes in your network over time?
Let me ask you about that
please.
briefly, Scott Robon. So, I think this is, as a fork, I've seen a little more about the modern network operating model, and it might be one of the most thorough DevOps-like implementations to NetOps that I've seen, which is great for like cloud providers and large data center providers. The enterprise user is a different class.
100%.
And like might not be ready for this at all. How are you adapting? What kind of success are you seeing with this? If it's a different presentation, tell me and I'll shut up.
This is again the softball layup for me to then hand it over to
trying to ask you hard questions,
which is perfect. So when we talk about this, we very explicitly don't mean a full Ansible DevOps pipeline and here you go, Mr. Customer, right? That we have lots of customers who do that.
Right.
We have lots of customers who are on the other side who want a point and click UI, and so the key here, I think most products end up thinking, or most vendors think of this as different products. I've got my DevOps product, or I've got my enterprise product. Maybe I like added some Ansible APIs to my enterprise product, and that'll like bridge the gap. We think of this as one thing because if these are layers on top of you've got a core networking model for what you want to do. Your network architect like wants to think about what that design is, and then it's how do you interact with that? Am I interacting at it from the UI or from a system like Ansible that's pushing it in? We support both. Am I interacting it from a point and click, like here's the front panel interface view, not to steal Paul's thunder of what he's going to show, and like here, let me click and make it, like the SMB type experience, right? I've got an L1 operator who's dealing with a ticket and just going to go and flap an interface. Like all of that is possible when you have the right network model under the covers. It's about how do you expose making changes to that model. And so absolutely, this is one of the things we've invested in heavily as we've gone from data center, focus, where a lot of the customers are much more DevOpsy, want to push in that direction, to campus WAN, et cetera, where like there are some people like that and who do that across their entire enterprise. But the large majority of the market is not looking for that. So absolutely, that's what we provide. Yeah,
Mary is saying, do you find that most of your customers are using CloudVision in addition to their current tooling? I know you said you're not an NPM and it digests the SNMP data. Is it like an addition to, or are you finding that your customers are able to replace some of their tools with CloudVision?
Our customers are all at different places of their journey. Many of them have limited tooling, and so we end up becoming the tool, right? I think a pretty common thing is to have some level of base SNMP monitoring across the system that people use, and we tend not to replace that until we become the majority of the network there. That's not really our goal, is to replace that. I think there's this depth versus breadth question. I think what we really want to focus on is how do we make it really easy to debug and understand everything you need to know about a problem, and not just tell you, hey, an interface is down, you should go look, right? We can do that too, like we have that capability, but that's not, that hasn't been our focus. So I think for the larger enterprises, really they use CloudVision in the domains where they deploy us and where we expand. But there are often other tools, and because those other tools tend to bring in stuff more than just the network, right? And there's the whole security angle, there's servers, et cetera. That's a role this still plays. And oftentimes, CloudVision is sending our higher level events, not just syslog from the device, into that tooling for people to react to.
I am pro network automation, emulating it. However, there are barriers in the enterprise realm. From Arista's perspective, what do you see as the top barriers to getting automation more thoroughly implemented?
So I'm going to answer your question. Then I'm going to hand it over to he's right here, to Paul. But honestly, they're not technical challenges. I think they're kind of organizational challenges. And I think that the way that we can help that from a product perspective is trying to mirror what people are doing manually today in the product, right? So simple pieces. I've got a process today that says I'm going to go capture these CLI commands before and after a change, and I actually go and, like, for compliance, I'm going to go and put that into some system over here. So like we can automate that part of it so that yes, you do it through automation, but you still get the same logs you have from before and after of like, here's the show command before and after. These are small things, but I think the biggest part is getting people used to the idea that they can do everything from there. that they need to not go to the CLI to just do the quick change, because that's the thing that people won't realize you did, and then at the next day you remove it, someone else removes it, and now you've got the problem again, right? So that kind of organizational change is really important. And I think where we can help from the product is making the product not be a totally new thing to learn, right? So like you can look, like one big thing in CloudVision is you can look at the full running config before and after that you're going to push, right? We don't abstract away and say, here's this model, it'll do something, right? Our operators know the CLI. They want to be able to go and look, but what are you exactly going to do? And so it's things like that we can do to really help them while still providing a point and click interface that says, if you don't care, that's great, just click here, right? Okay. So I'm going to turn this over because we're going to run out of time.
One other higher level question here then too is, are you also capturing and maintaining a record of the changes that have occurred in this platform, so that we know when and what has been changed,
Absolutely.
whether manually or otherwise?
The database, whether you're talking about telemetry coming in or changes at the top level, is all about storing the state historically over time, right? And so we know all the change controls you've done, what the state was before and after, both from a configuration perspective as well as telemetry. And I think Paul will probably show some of this a little bit more as we look at the product. So,
and then philosophically, there's two ways that companies approach this, and it sounds like you're doing both of them. And one is that we have this recommended designs, et cetera, and we're going to enforce these designs, and then we have this free for all where I'm just going to automate every little piece that we do normally and build them. So it sounds like this platform is allowing you to do both.
We do the full range. We have customers who come in and start and say, I've got a per device CLI, and I just want to automate that. And then you start to build models for the common pieces so you're not changing each one. Mm-hmm. We have customers who start at the other end, which is, I want to build a network validated design from a network model. Mm-hmm. Here are the parameters, here's the type of network I want generated all for me. And so like we support everything in between. And the way you operate it, this is all about how do I define what my network is, but how you operate it and what you get out of it is the same.
And the system allows allows guardrails to be put in. Then once you choose each of these automation packages that you're going to do and say you have to stay within the guardrails for these types of changes and you can't do them otherwise. Or it's not.
We're quite flexible. We're quite flexible, right? So we allow a bunch of pre and post checks on a change. We help you understand what the change is going to be. We really try to avoid limiting people from using the features they want to use, if that makes sense, but giving them the ability to really deploy it in a safe and automated way.
Okay.
So if we build the models like. For example, like where a customer wants to standardize, like almost like config template rendering, I guess is what we were talking about there. Where they might just implement variables for different types of switch configurations or something like that. Is that only based on like Arista devices and syntax, or can you model like other vendor changes to be pushed out from CloudVision?
So CloudVision only does configuration management of Arista devices. I think that we leverage a bunch of the capabilities of transactional config changes and et cetera that other vendors don't always support, unfortunately. Sure. If you're interested, I would take a look at I think it's avd.sh. It's a Arista validated designs. You can look at it on GitHub. There's a whole set of documentation and kind of package around how do you generate Arista validated designs from these models. And I think it's really interesting. I think that we have kind of done that at times for other vendors for generating the config, but that's not something we do within the product in terms of pushing it out and managing it.